Dr. Christina Godfrey. Christina is an assistant professor at Queen's University School of Nursing and the scientific director and methodologist for the Queen's Joanna Briggs collaboration in Canada. As a specialist in research synthesis methodologies, Christina has received formal synthesis training through the Cochrane collaboration and JBI and is certified as a trainer in the JBI methods of synthesis. Christina provides methodological support to faculty, clinicians and graduate students internal to Queen's University and to emerging synthesis groups and centres throughout Canada. Please join me in welcoming Christina.
Good afternoon and thank you for the introduction. And as you see, he's taken away the monitor here, otherwise you wouldn't see me. So I'm glad at least you can see more than just a tuft of hair. By way of the disclaimers that everyone seems to be doing, I have a few disclaimers. The first one being, yes, I am Canadian, but my funny accent, sorry Trish, my funny accent is because I'm actually South African, or I was born there. So if you're trying to place and or understand, it's because my accent is South African and not Canadian. Further, to reinstate, if we do have a result you're wanting to weep or rejoice, please go ahead. And so I'm really looking forward today to present some information on mentorship. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the concept of mentorship. I'm going to talk about the problem and why we need mentorship, and then also give you some of the solutions that we are busy experimenting with. So this picture crossed my path, as many pictures do from the internet, many years ago, and it caught my eye because it totally epitomizes for me the concept of mentorship. And it just the most beautiful picture. And believe it or not, this is actually a male pigeon. Not that you can tell by anatomical means, but by the colors of his feathers. But this is a male pigeon. But it is beautiful, and I see that as a logo for our concept of mentorship with being under his wings. And it's just beautiful. So let's have a look then at a definition of mentorship. In their fairly recent book, Dr. Strauss and the late Dr. Sackett in 2014, they have a book on mentorship in academic medicine, which is very interesting. They define mentorship as a process whereby an experienced, highly regarded, empathic, which is nice, person guides another, usually younger or less experienced, in the development and re-examination of their own ideas, learning and personal and professional development. But when we look a little bit further back, it looks like the whole concept of mentorship can be traced back to some of the Greek mythology times. And story has it that Odysseus placed his older friend, Mentor, in charge of his household and also his son, Telemachus, when he went to the Trojan War. So it looks like there was a very formal role. But story also says that Athena disguised herself as Mentor and provided mentoring to Telemachus. So they were always up to some sort of mischief. So obviously it doesn't matter who you are, if you assume that role and that mantle, then that mentoring can be given. So I want to look at just a couple of the key aspects of the whole concept of mentoring and what it's about. And one of the most important aspects to note is that mentoring is not a one-way street. It's not just the movement of guidance and knowledge and supervision and support from the mentor to the mentee that the mentor receives in return. And when that is a rich relationship, it is an extremely rewarding relationship. There is an exchange of knowledge and ideas. So it does appear that there are a lot of joys of mentoring. But there are some questions, and one of the most important questions are how many? So it's an intense relationship. How many mentees can one mentor take on? And if you see the picture, you get quite bent out of shape when you're trying to keep track. So it's like, how many, how do we do, how many can we run? And certainly when you're in an academic institution, it's really hard to take on many mentees and do the rest of everything else that you're doing as well. So tracking them, and maybe that is a little too many. And so in the process of establishing that relationship, the relationship between the mentor and the mentee has to be located and established. And so the first process is to actually connect the mentor and the mentee. And this is not a relationship that can be assigned. So the director or the dean cannot assign this relationship because it's such a personal and rather intimate relationship. It's really much more helpful if people seek out those with whom they know they're going to get on, because it's really important to have some sort of common ground, at least at the beginning, to be able to share ideas and to move forward. So we also know that there's quite a lot of support in the process of mentoring, and if the person is going to be older, no, they're not in all cases, but is going to be older than the mentee, that sometimes it might smell like, taste like, look a little like parenting. So the next question is where does parenting and mentoring begin? And so the thought perhaps is that mentoring kind of takes over where parents let go. But we all know that the ultimate goal is to raise the level of scholarship, and sometimes that needs quite a lot of pushing. But it's achievable, and we make it happen, and people get to climb their mountains no matter how big or how small, and reach the top, and do need to be acknowledged and accredited with that. So mentoring is a tremendously valuable situation, and I mean, not making light of it with these pictures, but just to point out that there are many, many aspects, and a lot of research has been done and continues to be done in terms of how mentoring can help. And I'm about to go into some different aspects of it in our situation here. So why do we, as members of the JBI collaboration, need mentoring? And as part of the collaboration since 2004, it's really obvious to our center. We were the first center in the whole of Canada, and as individuals were trained and became groups and became interested in working in this area, and they required a lot of support, that there are many issues. And so one of the first one is the complexity of the whole process of evidence synthesis. We do train for a week, but people spiral out of that and are almost immediately, if not sooner, gobbled up by their lives. And probably a very small percentage of what you've spoken about in that whole week's worth of training is retained, which is unfortunate, but probably true. And as you know, they go back, they've missed a week of work, and they are gobbled up in their lives. And so it's not only the complexity of the actual training and the material and the concepts involved in synthesis, but the complexity of our lives, which doesn't allow us time to absorb, to reflect, and then to kind of then move on at our own pace. These are the demands that are placed upon us all. Further added to this is context. So there are areas which are resource-rich and areas which are not as resource-rich, and these further complicate the ability to then take that information we've gained in a week and really move immediately on to doing that review, which would consolidate that information. So these are some of the reasons, and these are not certainly particular to Canada. Certainly, I'm highly aware of them in Canada because I provide that service of mentoring across Canada, but certainly I think this is true right across our collaboration, that we provide that great information within a week, and then somehow they fall off the edge, and we need to find something to support them for the next steps of their review. So, in terms of our role in Queen's Collaboration for Healthcare Quality, how we took on the role of mentorship is a product of 3 different events. And the first event is actually a result of my own experience. So in a previous life, I actually worked in computers. Nursing is a 3rd career for me. So in my 2nd career, I was in computers for about 15 years. And in that domain, I was a technical writer, which places me in that position of understanding the computer program and understanding also the needs of the users who are using that program, and able to influence the program to support those who needed it, and able to explain to those who needed the program what it is they needed to do to make what they wanted to happen. And I did that for about 10 of those 15 years. And so in coming to this situation, it wasn't a huge leap for me to find exactly the same niche in being able to see what the evidence synthesis requires and how to help those who have just been trained or who were trained a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever, and how to then make what's happened and what the knowledge and find the holes in their knowledge and how to help them along. The second thing that lines up is my own mentoring experience. And I had the privilege of being mentored by Dr. Margaret Harrison through my master's and PhD programs, and that was phenomenal in setting me up with the experience of that mentorship, and how that when you receive and exchange that really dedicated interaction, how that sets you up for your next moves forward. And so having experienced that myself, and it's really interesting because I still see that I'm an examiner now for other people's work in our department and outside our departments, and I see constantly how that mentoring set me so far ahead, and those students who haven't had that same level of mentoring, how they are missing pieces in their education. So having received that exemplary mentoring, understanding then that is something that I want to provide to others. And then the third thing that set us up for this process was a requirement, which has just been dropped actually from JBI, that if you were trained and you were not a collaborating center, you had to submit through a collaborating center. And we had the unenviable position of being the only collaborating center in Canada. And so everyone we trained and everyone who was trained across Canada submitted their reviews through our center. And so those 3 things set up the process whereby we had a fairly extensive mentoring program that allowed me to have a good sense of what the issues were. And certainly recognize the very, very strong need amongst those who had their experience with evidence synthesis and now wanted to move on to actually doing the synthesis. So our solutions were threefold. The first one was a product called Can Synthesize. It's what I call a flat document. By that I mean it's a Word document. It's got no podcasts and webinars and anything that jumps out and bites. It's just a flat paper online document. And really that was an attempt to just provide a synopsis of the reviewer's manual into a really condensed form, not quite a cheat sheet, but a condensed form to help those jog their memory 3 months later, when they come back to doing a systematic review, what it is they were needing to do. So that is actually on the JBI website. It probably needs to be updated now, given the tremendous changes that have occurred. But it's there. It's on the director's webpage, and it's a free e-document for you to have a look at. Then, given that we are all nurses and RNs, I then spearheaded the development of something called the Review Nanny, the RN, which we've nicknamed the Review Nanny. So the Review Nanny was born because Dr. Margaret Harrison and I were approached to do a review, and they asked us that dreaded question. That is, how much does it cost to do a systematic review? And that's a question we get asked. And so, not having the immediate answer, our solution was to go back and do a very granular document of of the process from scratch through to the end of doing systematic review. So I ended up with another, what we call a flat document, Word document. And we then mapped that, because JBI has a very clear timeline, took the timelines, dropped them from weeks to hours or to days, and were then able in some way to calculate out how much it would cost somehow to do a review. So that's how Nanny was born. And so then we had this quite granular flat document, but once again, it was a flat document. And it's becoming so clear that flat documents don't do anything. So we kept getting requests for the document, but we just felt that we could do better. So thought we put it up on the web, that it will actually have something more to contribute as being a live document that we can actually have a look at. So we did that. We put it up on the web, and we should by now have had it available to all of you. But as you know, anyone who deals with IT, and I can say this because I've been there, it's extremely difficult to get anything accomplished. And unfortunately for us, our IT, who was dedicated to our project, is also an engineer, which means that he was pulled into the simulation labs to work with the mannequins, and he went totally AWOL. So our product is in fact not ready. So just to tell you a little bit about CanCom, as I say, we've just started with CanCom. So we now have 8 centers around, and with those 8 centers, we had 46 reviews, and each review, of course, as you know, has 3 cycles. So those reviews used to go through here in order to go to JBI. So part of that reason was really the reason behind the beginning of Review Nanny. It's not certainly the only solution into mentoring, but it certainly was one of the arms of a mentoring program that we wanted to embark on. And our next process would then really to do something much more formal. So we really need to go to those now 8 centers and say, what are their needs and where are the holes in there? What do they need to help them do reviews? And to really develop a formal mentorship program. And I know that I've been working with Craig and his team, so that formal mentorship program will be developed with Craig. And Marsha in Louisiana has a mentorship program which she has some evaluation with, so we'll be working with Marsha to understand what aspects of her mentorship program that she's evaluating, whether we can take that onto our program as well. So that's where we're heading in terms of our next. So our goal is everyone to get to the top of their hill and to get to produce the reviews that we want them to produce, and for us to provide that level of support and that mentorship so that that can be accomplished. There is a huge need. I'm very happy to step into that space to assist people to make that happen. Thank you.